So what I want to do in this video is talk about how I create arrangements in the MPC Live. So stick around for that. Welcome back to Lifted Noise. My name's Raul, and if you haven't been to my channel before, what I do here is MPC Live tutorials, beat making videos, and samples. I share those every once in a while. When I first started making beats, and for the longest time I made very loop sounding repetitive music, but over the years I've adapted the method of creating arrangements from one single sequence by copying that sequence and removing elements to create new sections. So I'm going to quickly go over the elements of a beat that I created. So in other words, all the tracks that it contains. At the moment it's a single sequence, and I'm going to take it and arrange it into an instrumental with an intro, a hook, a verse, and an outro. Alright, starting with track number 1, I started with this flute sample and just chopped it up. Okay, and on track 2 I have my kick. Track 3 would be my snare. Then moving on to track 4, I have a hi-hat. Track 5 is just a crash cymbal. Track 6, labeled percussion, but I think I ended up leaving that one blank. Number 7 is a bass line. Okay. Track number 8, I used this synth that sounded like a choir. So at this point I have everything layered, and it sounds like this. I think at this point it's like where you gotta just start to flesh it out and make it into a full arrangement to actually feel like you can finish it. So I'm gonna copy this sequence over a few times. Go in here, copy sequence, and then I'm gonna label this one. It's gonna be hook. Go ahead and do that. I'm gonna copy it again. This time I'm going to create a verse section. Do it. I'm going to do this again. Do it again. I'm going to create a outro. So my whole arrangement layout is pretty simple. I'm still learning, and this is just what I've kind of come to create as a standard thing for myself. So it's a arrangement that consists of an intro, a hook, a verse. Well, the hook would repeat again, and then a verse, repeat itself, and then have an outro or so. Okay, so I have 4 different sections that are identical. Alright, so from here I like to make use and take advantage of the track mute function. I use it as like a live arrangement brainstorming spot. Hit play, I'll start muting things out just to get an idea of what I want to remove from certain sections. So right now I'm on my intro, and I kind of do the same thing for my intro, and I'll just remove all my drums to begin with. And everything else, I'll just start with the main idea of my sample on track 1, which is, at this moment, my little sample chops. So I'll just start with that, and then I have some more instrument elements right here on track, I think it's 8. I hear what that sounds like. Maybe I could start it out with just a flute chop, and then bring in this instrument. So my other idea would be to do the opposite of what I just did, and to start out with this instrument right here on track 8, and maybe halfway through come in with the sample chop. So I'm just going to erase the first half of the sample chops. Actually, I'm going to leave kind of one before the 5th bar. So I'll shift and cut that out and hit play. Alright, so from here I'm gonna mess around with some of the drums, because I want it to kind of come in towards the end of that sequence in order to slightly build it up before the next sequence drops, which is most likely going to be my hook. So mess around with it. So I like that. I'm just gonna bring in the last snare that hit before the sequence comes back around and loops, and then I'm gonna drop in the hi-hats as well. So moving over to my track that has my snare on it. So from here I'm gonna erase everything before this point. I'm gonna move over to my hi-hat, erase everything before that point as well. And that's pretty much all I'll do for the intro, so I'll move over to the hook. Okay, so I'm not going to be doing much for the hook. I do want to make this longer because it's 8 bars, but it's double time, so it's really 4. And usually a hook will be at least 8 bars, so I got to double the length. So some other things that I might do would be to move towards the end of this to kind of start removing some elements before it hits my verse. And the reason why I'd want to do that is just to have a smooth transition. It's not like an abrupt transition. Sometimes it works where you can just completely remove something and it sounds good, but other times you kind of have to gradually remove things, otherwise it just sounds weird. So I'm going to move over to my verse and probably just remove one element. I already have an idea of what I'm going to do, and it's probably just going to remove my main sample chop. So if I just mute that out, it kind of gives more space by removing that for, say, a rapper. So one thing I'm going to do to make the transition from the hook to the verse smoother is I'm going to go to the sample chop, and I'm going to chop out one of the last notes before the sequence loops around. So I'm just really going to cut out this note right here. So cut that out, and then play it back. And there's some other things I could do, like maybe drop out a kick or a snare or something, some hi-hats, and the hi-hat. That's kind of, okay, let's do this. And then we'll go over to the hi-hats. Just cut out the end of it. Play from there. Another thing to do right here would be like to do like a riser, or I can reverse this crash and put it right here on this pad. So this is on the hook. I'm going to put it on this pad. So now I have it on 2 pads. I need to go over to LFO modulation. Make sure they're on the same mute group. I do this a lot, so I have a template already set up like this. And then I want to make sure slices hit the pad so that I can reverse this and then actually have a different start point if I wanted to. So I can do this. Okay, so moving over to my cymbals. Let's sequence that in a little reverse. May have been a little too early. Yeah, I just need to go back to the tail and make it longer on that. Now that I have a decent, okay transition from my hook to my verse, I want to work on my verse a little bit more. Right now it's set for 8 bars, being that it's in double time. It's really like 4 bars, so I'm going to go ahead and double the length of that. So now I have an 8-bar loop. The kind of standard for hip-hop is 16 bars, so I'm actually going to double length it again. It says 32 bars, but again, because it's in double time, it's actually considered 16 bars. So From here, I'll just do some simple things to make this the verse a little bit more interesting. And I'll just go into my track mutes again and mess around with muting out a few things. And what I like to do is mute out maybe my snare or my hi-hat here and there. Go into grid view and start erasing some of those things. I'm gonna go in to my snare grid view track. So right about here. Cut that out. Then I think right here, about on the 9th bar, I went ahead and cut out some hi-hats. So if I change up, I need to zoom this in a bit. Let's go about right there. Shift cut, bring this back a little bit, hit play, not play start, so it'll play from where my playhead's at. I want that hi-hat out for a little bit longer, so I cut it out here. I'm going to cut some more out. It's just all about patterns, but then you could switch it up and you don't have to be so repetitive or pattern driven with what you're doing. That's probably better too, to keep it interesting. And then I'm coming up towards the end of the loop on the verse sequence. So I'm going to do some of the similar things that I did with the hook at the end so that it transitions smoothly back to the hook. Probably bring in that reverse cymbal again. Overdub it in. So I usually like to have a different bass line sequence for my verse and my hook just to keep things interesting. In this case, I didn't come up with something, which I usually do when I'm creating my beat. I'm going to go ahead and mute out the bass on the verse just to give it another go and see if I can come up with a different bass line for the verse part. Copy. Shift paste. So I think it sounds alright. So whether I think it's perfect or not, I'm just going to keep moving along. I don't think that the transition from the hook to the verse sounds so smooth because the bass line does really change up quite significantly. To go into grid view and then erase some of the bass notes in the hook towards the end of the sequence before the verse drops in. A couple others, cut those. So there's kind of a stop, kind of a pause in the bass line before the verse comes in, but then you got a couple notes that lead up into the verse. I cut about a little too much out. So this is really just trial and error for me. So let's see. It might be good if I just shorten the end of this and take a couple of these out. So I've got some transitions and some parts working for me. I got a hook, an intro, a verse. And now the last thing I'm going to do is create an outro. What I'm going to do here is kind of start removing things, certain elements, so that the beat starts to come apart. So it kind of fades away in a manner with certain elements just starting to disappear. First thing I'm going to drop out is a hi-hat. And it's going to drop out after the first snare hit. So it's going to be like right there, everything chopped after that. Let's go in here. cut that. Cut out some snares now. So pretty much anything beyond. I just want to leave the first one in there and cut the rest out. I like to tease it a little bit. Let's see, cut these out. Turn the loop off on this because this is how my outro finishes. I'm going to extend it a couple bars just in case, just so the sounds ring out at the end. But I still want to start removing some other things. So back in the track mute. To my kicks. Cut that all out, make sure everything's gone. Still need to cut these out. Okay, and then to my crash cymbal. I want this to be the last symbol that I have on there. So I just need to remove this one. Alright, there. And then I want the bass line to drop off a little earlier. Cut it out of here. I'm gonna see how it ends right there. If I keep that rest of that bass line, have it come back in. I think it'd be cool if I brought another. Yeah, so I'm going to add another little note at the end of that just to make it sound complete. Cool. Let's shorten this up just a little bit. Alright, so that's it. Now from here, I'm quickly going to build the entire sequence, put them together in song mode. Start with my intro. It's going to play once, insert. I'm going to put my hook in there one time, then my verse one time. Then I'm going to insert a hook again. And then insert the outro. We convert to sequence. Put it on track. I'll do track 1 since I usually leave that empty for it. There we go. So here is my entire track. Alright, so that's it for me. I think the best thing you could do when you feel stuck with a beat is to flesh out an arrangement and just be done with it. Put your effort out without any expectation, because in the practice of doing it every time, you know you're gonna get better. So I think that's the best philosophy for life, is just to give it your all. And that's it, just give it your all. So I'm gonna leave y'all here. I'm gonna play the beat. Let y'all hear that for a second. Go ahead, leave me some feedback, like, comment, subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you get notifications of more videos like these. MPC Live tutorials, beat making videos, samples, and all that. So everybody stay humble, lift noise.